Now, the South African Human Rights Commissioner Tshepo Madlingozi joins us now for more on this hearings. Mr. Madlingozi, thank you for your time this evening. Today was day one of those hearings. You heard quite a number of testimonies, such as the ones that our viewers heard just now. Some are complaining that the poorest in our communities, those are the most disadvantaged, are being used and are being taken advantage of when it comes to the issue of trying to preserve the little energy that we have, and they are not getting that. Which are the other stakeholders that you heard from, and what were your conclusions, so to speak, a comprehensive conclusion of what you heard today?
Good evening, Audrey, and good evening to your listeners. Yes, we heard from a number of stakeholders today. We heard from community members, 2 or 3 community members and community leaders, all of them from townships and peri-rural locations. And, you know, if one summarizes the submissions, they were in 4 themes. The first one being that there's no transparency as far as load reduction is concerned, that the implementation thereof, there's no transparency, there's no consultation, and that Eskom seeks to be hiding the true causes of load shedding and load reduction. The second submission that they made was that load reduction truly affects disproportionately poor, vulnerable communities, and thereby, you know, exacerbates in the hardship. The third submission, people spoke about impact on the right to health, the right to education, the right to life in terms of safety. And then lastly, people spoke about, you know, the fact that, you know, Eskom blames consumers, but actually the blame is to be shared between some people who steal electricity, as well as within Eskom issues of corruption, issues of fraud, and so forth. So we heard from a number of stakeholders. We also heard from a couple of lawyers from different organizations who all submitted that load reduction, in their opinion, is a violation of the right to dignity, the right to equality, the right to health, and that in their opinion, there was no justification for load reduction. We have not reached any conclusion as yet. It was only day one of the inquiry. We will continue with our inquiry tomorrow.
Yes, I understand this is only day one. You have, I think it's a 3-day hearing that you are having. I mean, it almost feels as if when the whole country moved on, when load shedding ended almost a year ago, people forgot that there's people in Orange Farm, in Ga-Rankuwa, who have been left behind, who are still experiencing these issues of having no electricity. When you speak to them, what kind of communication have they heard from the authorities, from Eskom, for example? Because what Eskom says is we're dealing with people that are connecting illegally to the grid, and therefore we cannot punish people that are actually paying for this product to suffer the same way. Now, how is this an infringement on the rights of people that most of them are they don't have the money to pay for the services?
So that is the subject of the inquiry. That's one of the things that we want to find out. Number one, we seek to hear from Eskom, from NESA, from the Ministry of Electricity, what is the justification for load reduction, what policy justification is there, but also what mitigation measures have they put in place to, you know, in respect of vulnerable communities. Now, we received written submissions from Limpopo, from Eastern Cape, from Free State, from Gauteng, where members of the committee were saying, number one, I pay for electricity, but when there's load reduction, it tantamounts to collective punishment. Secondly, we heard from people who say, where I stay, there is no electrification. I've been staying in the same area for 40 years. It is a so-called informal settlement. I want to pay, I want to be normalized, but there's no electricity. Therefore, I found myself in a situation where all around me there is unauthorized, you know, connections. Then you find people that says there are faults with the meter. There have been meters that are not working for 3 years, for 4 years. That's what they're telling us. So sometimes that, you know, we are law-abiding citizens, or people who find ourselves in South Africa, but the meters are not working. Then we had a group of people who come to us and say, we know that it is ESCOM technicians or ESCOM subcontractors who lure community members to, connect illegally and bribe them. And therefore, there's a multiple of factors where communities say, we want to be normalized, we want to pay, but there are no, infrastructure, and that the policy that they call collective punishment amounts to a breach of the right to dignity, the right to equality, and the right to life, that the same policy is not implemented in formerly, historically wide areas. So they say that there is what one person who appeared before us called economic or energy apartheid.
Yeah, because essentially the demographics of the communities that are affected by this load reduction is mostly black people. I mean, just today, we saw a statement from City Power, this is just for Johannesburg, saying they have actually suspended load reduction. Now, what is the scope of your probe? How far are you going with it?
So, as I said, number one, we want to hear from ESCOM, NESA, the Ministry of Electricity, what is the scope of load reduction? What is the extent of load reduction? What is the policy justification from a human rights perspective? We also seek to find out which communities are disproportionately affected. What are the demographics of those communities? Fourthly, we want to find out what are some human rights that are implicated with load reduction? What human rights are potentially violated as far as load reduction are concerned? Lastly, we want to find out what mitigation measures have been put by ESCOM and by the Ministry of Electricity, both of which seems to concede that load reduction is implemented in what they call high density, high risk areas.
Yeah, I guess my question was directly trying to figure out how far you're going in terms of the people that have been impacted by this load reduction outside of what we've heard from people in Johannesburg.
Yes, no, it is a national inquiry. As I explained earlier, we've received written submissions from Limpopo, from Eastern Cape, from Free State, from Gauteng. It is a national inquiry because the issue of load reduction seem to be applied nationally. So the scope and the geographical reach of our inquiry is national.
Yeah. What are some of the mitigations that you've heard in terms of trying to deal with this load reduction? Has it happened at all, especially from the power suppliers? What measures have they put in place?
Well, tomorrow we'll hear from NESA, the regulator. On the 18th, we'll hear from the Ministry of Electricity, the Minister Ramokgopa himself will be appearing before us on the 18th. Also on the 18th, we'll hear from ESCOM. I must also say that we will also be hearing from the Department of Health, the Department of Basic Education, as well as SAHRC, to tell us how has load reduction impacted on them. Now, in terms of mitigation measures, I guess we'll wait to hear from the regulator as well as ESCOM and the Ministry of Electricity.
Yeah, I suppose you have your work cut out for you, Mr. Madlingozi. We'll have to leave it there. Today was day one. I assume tomorrow will be day two, and we'll be happy to have you tell us more about what you're hearing and how this probe is likely to take shape going forward, particularly in redressing the concerns of these people that have been affected by this load reduction. And we'll have to leave that conversation there for now. We'll take a short break. Thereafter, we'll bring you more news and top stories of the evening. Stay with us.